And welcome back, everybody, to another PaintCast. My name is Ashton. I am the man behind the paintbrush here at Red Modeling Painting. These PaintCast videos are my way of helping people learn how to paint better and sharing some of that knowledge with everyone else out there by streaming it live on Twitch here and posting it to YouTube when we're done for everyone to view. So thanks for sticking around. Tonight what we're going to be working on is a little bit of a basing tutorial. We're wrapping up these three Signar models that I've been working on for Chris. The first paint cast that he had done was on Epic Iris here, and we painted her up. This is the scheme that his mercs and his army are going to follow. The second one that we did for him, that I did for him, was Kane, Epic Kane here, and got him painted up and ready to go. And then the last thing that that I did for him, painting wise, was this Centurion, and got that all taken care of for him. So what we need to work on now is getting the basing done for these miniatures and getting them back to Chris. So Chris, this is going to be the last paint cast that we're going to do for you. I hope that you've enjoyed this, and I hope that you get out of it what you wanted. And of course, as a reminder, you've got the 3 hours of Google chat time with me once you get these back to you. So make sure and take advantage of that when you get these back, and ask your questions and make sure you get all that taken care of. So so with that being said, what I want to cover tonight with Chris is just some basics on basing an army. He didn't have any particular way he wanted it based. He just wanted to have loose gravel, I think was what he said. So we're not trying to make it too crazy for him here, or too intense one way or another. Just trying to keep things a little bit simple. I do want to change just a couple of things up here. Just going to brighten that image a little bit for you guys, so it's just a little easier for you guys to see. That looks a lot better. There we go. So what I want to do is start here first off with Epic Iris, and I want to explain some stuff to you, Chris. My reasoning behind what I'm doing here on the base. Okay, just zooming in here for you. So you can see the gravel that I've put on the base edge there. Okay, this was done, and I'm going to demonstrate it on your Centurion. This was done simply by putting a little bit of white PVA glue on the base, sprinkling some gravel on top, and then letting it dry, and adding an additional layer of PVA glue once it dried to really secure everything down. But what I want to point out in this basing, Chris, is basing is a way to tie your army together. It's a way to give your army a theme of what's going on with it. Okay, a good example of that, and I was showing this a little earlier in my earlier paint cast tonight, is my Getter X model here. All of my circle miniatures are based in a similar manner to this guy. Okay, kind of a stone ruined type base with the leaves on top, a little bit of stray grass, a little bit of rubble, and that's the theme that I'm going for. And so my whole army has this going for them. My Menoth army all has the desert thing going for them. So basing is not only visually how you can tie your army together, but it is also a good way you can tie your army together with the color scheme as well. And that's why I chose the particular color I did on your basing, and that color is Crick's Bane base. Okay, and the reason why I chose that color as opposed to to other ones that were available, is that's a color I've used on all of these miniatures as I've painted them. Okay. One thing I need to do just here real quick, I can see that my camera is mirrored, and so that should fix that. Now the words are appearing correctly instead of backwards, so sorry about that, Chris. So, but the reason why I chose Crick's Bane base as the base color for your army is because it unifies it. For example, on your Centurion here, the Crick's Bane base was used on the shadow on the white. Okay, on Iris, the Crick's Bane base was used as the shadow and the cloak. All right, and then on Cain, the Crick's Bane base was used again, the shadow on the white, some on the face, some on the black trim here. So that would be my suggestion when you're basing, deciding what color you want to base your army, is pick a color that you've used on all the models. So whether you've got, you know, all your Signar fielded, or whether you've got your Signar plus your Mercs fielded, by using that color that all of them have in common, you're creating harmony in your overall theme of your army. And so that's what you want to go for. That's why you want to do that, is to create that appearance. So what I'm going to do is set those aside. I'm going to come back here to your Centurion, and we're going to talk about now how to apply the PVA glue to the base and put the gravel on to create the effect that you're after. For this, I recommend a couple of things. First off, I'm not going to do it tonight because I don't have something handy, but get yourself some kind of mat or something to work over, or some kind of tray, okay? Because the sand that you're going to apply is going to get all over the place, and having some way to kind of capture that is really going to help. So make sure you have that. The other thing that you're going to need is just some white PVA glue, okay? And then you're also going to need some ballast or some sand. This is a mixture of sandbox sand. Right here is ballast used for trains, and then I've also, there's some sand dunes near my house here. They're old lava sand dunes, and they've got this really, really fine sand in it. So I've kind of mixed all three of those things into here, and that's what I use as my basing medium, really. I mean, it just it does a really good job. It keeps it real simple for me. So those are what you're going to need to do this. And then the last thing you're going to need is, grab it here, you're going to need yourself an old brush that you don't mind getting some glue on. Okay? So, how do we start? First thing you want to do, get yourself some water, distilled water, get yourself PVA glue, get yourself a paint well. Fill that paint well up. There you go. Fill that paint well up with some paint, and thin that glue out now. Okay, you don't want to use straight PVA glue. You want that thinned down just a little bit. It makes it a little easier to work with, and spreads things out a little easier. Just mix it up with your brush, and you should get a nice smooth consistency out of it. I just used normal white Elmer's glue that I buy at the craft store. A couple dollars a bottle, real cheap stuff. And then once you've got your glue mixed up there, you just start painting the base with the glue, and you're going to apply it fairly liberally, and get a nice thick layer on there. Just working around the feet. come up underneath in here. And you're going to want, you know, that layer of glue to be fairly thick, fairly opaque, because it's going to evaporate fairly quick and you're going to be working on it for a little bit here. So there's all the glue there that I'm going to put on, a little bit more. And the nice thing about PVA glue is it is water-based, so you can just rinse it out in your paint well and in your rinse well. And if you're changing your paint water out, your rinse water out every few days, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. And I will go ahead and set this here. It's going to throw my white balance off, but that is okay for now. And you know, really what I do, I just take my bucket of sand here, and I just kind of shake it on top like I'm pouring Parmesan cheese on spaghetti. You know, I don't try and do anything specific. It keeps it random. It keeps it covered well. Okay, and that's what it's going to look like now. Let me move this out so the white balance goes back. Move this out. Go back to a nice black background. And you can see that that sand is just going to sit on there now. Now the last thing that I do here before I'll set it aside to dry is I will turn it sideways and just kind of let the loose sand shake off, okay? And then there you can see the sand now on the base. Okay. Now, one thing I will do though is get yourself a toothpick, and you can see, actually it's not, yeah, right here on the front, the sand is kind of come up a little too high around the foot. So you'll just take that toothpick and just kind of move that sand around and expose a little bit more of that foot. You can use it to create a depression in the sand where, you know, a footprint had been, you know, kind of thing. Maybe you play Menoth and you want to make a memento to the Footprints in the Sand poem and put footprints in the sand in your base. I don't know. So anyway, there you go, Chris. Really simple how to apply the sand to the base. Very straightforward. Now that's going to sit, I'm going to set that aside and let that dry. Okay? It's going to dry overnight. Get some of this sand and glue off here. Now I want to show you the next step though. So tomorrow you get your miniature and that sand, you go to check, the sand is still loose, okay? And you're left with a base that is covered in sand, but the sand is not fully adhered, or if you were to touch it, you can feel it breaking off a little bit. So what you simply do is just apply another coat of the glue. And this is a Forge World avatar that I'm working on for a client, and I'm in the middle of basing his, and so I'm just going to use this as an example real quick. And this is just going to reinforce the glued layer that's already been applied and make it so that when you come back to do your dry brushing and things like that, things don't fall off or get knocked off. The other thing you can do, a lot of people are really into using cork to make their bases right now. And I use cork for bases all the time. I think it's great. Usually I'll sculpt clay or something over the top of it, you know, epoxy sculpt or something like that to give it a little bit more of a realistic effect. But one thing you can do to the cork, though, to make it more easy to take paint, because sometimes cork will suck up the paint really fast, is cover it in a watered down layer of PVA glue like this, and that will seal it more or less and make it so that when you start painting over it, it's not just soaking up all that paint inside the cork. So that's one option for you, one idea for you. So there you go. That's that second layer of the glue is on now. Okay, and now we come to step 3. The sand has been applied, the glue has been applied, and you have a nice hard layer of gravel that is ready to be taken to the next level. Okay, that's this guy right here. And what I'm going to do, just to make it a little easier on me, is I am going to just add a little bit of double-sided tape here to this cork. Just so I can hold this miniature a little better. Okay, that'll be a little easier to hold now. So we've got the step 3 going on now. So what you do is, once that gravel is nice and dry, you then are going to simply paint your base coat layer on top of it, which in this case was the Crixbane base. And now you want to highlight and pick out some of these rocks. Easiest way to do this, Chris, is a dry brush. Okay, really simple, really straightforward. And we're going to dry brush this, though, in a couple of different colors. Okay, and I want to have this rock on the base to be a nice earthy feel to it. So we're going to start with a nice earthy color. Okay, and I'm going to go to Vallejo for this, and we're going to use Vallejo Flat Earth, which is olive drab, chocolate brown. I don't have any flat earth. I thought I did. That's okay. The leather brown is a nice, oh, there it is right there. It's at the top. Okay, sorry. So we're going to use Vallejo Flat Earth for the first dry brush layer. And just a reminder to those guys in chat who are hanging out, if you have your questions, make sure and post those up. When I get to the last few minutes of the broadcast, I will go back in and address those questions. So I'm going to put a drop or two of the flat earth on my palette. And when you're dry brushing, Chris, you want to make sure to use a dry brush. Don't use a brush that had been previously wet, because then the dry brushing it does not work as well. And simply what you're going to do is you take a little bit of your base color. Let me get myself situated here for this. By the way, here's the dry brush that I use. Okay, so you put a little bit of your base color on the tip of the brush there. Okay. Going to add just a little bit more. And then take a paper towel, and then you're going to simply just wipe that excess paint off the paper towel with the paper towel, and then take that brush and lightly drag it over the rocks, and it's just going to pick up those highlights on the base and give you a little bit of variation in tone and color. And you're just going to do this a few times. You don't need to do it a lot, but just enough to kind of start giving the idea or the impression of color on those rocks. Okay, you can see how that looks. All right, for the next color, we're going to add, because Crick's Bane base is a green-based gray, I'm going to add a little bit of green into the dry brushing. And for that, I'm going to use Vallejo USA Olive Drab. It's a nice dark browny green color. Okay. And same thing, put a little on the tip of your brush, dry it off on the paper towel, and this time as you apply it, just kind of apply it randomly. Don't try and cover the whole area like you did with that first coat, and this will just pick things out a little differently than that first layer and give you some variation there in the rock. And I will point out also, Chris, that I am not cleaning my brush between dry brushing colors. I leave the previous layer of paint in there. That's one of the ways to smooth out your dry brushing, to make it so it looks a little more clean. For the next color, we're going to use Vallejo Yellow Green, and this is going to kind of serve the purpose of a highlight color for the basing. And again, I'm just putting a dot on the tip of the dry brush, wiping it off on the paper towel, and then dragging it across. This one I am dragging across a bit more uniformly, or in a uniform manner. Okay, you see how that's starting to get some nice variation in colors there. And now we really need to come up to a lighter color here so that we can start getting some pop and some contrast out of it. And for that, we're going to go back to P3 and use P3 Thrall Flesh. Again, put a drop on your palette. Drop on your brush. Dry it off the towel. And then this one, you really want to drag lightly and just get the highlights. Just get those top edges. You can see how that looks. And the finishing touch for this base, Chris, is going to be Vallejo Flat Black. Right there. And this is going to go around the rim of the base. And this is going to be the basing color. Or the rim base color for your bases. What I like about using Vallejo on bases, or as my colors when I'm painting bases, is it dries really fast, it dries really flat. It doesn't have a lot of gloss to it when it dries, a lot of sheen to it, and it covers very well, especially the black. The Vallejo black is one of the best blacks I've used as far as coverage goes. It's fantastic. Not so good for blending, to be honest, but great coverage, great opacity. Okay. And the last thing you can do, or another additional thing, I shouldn't say the last thing, I think that's what I said last time, was the last thing you can do is paint it black. Well, next thing you can do is take a little bit of that final highlight color and just pick out a couple of the rocks. Just picking out some of the edges of some of the rocks. Okay, and you can do the same thing with the other colors that you mixed. The olive or the yellow green. Put a little bit of yellow green in there. And there we go. So you're just slowly building that up. Another detail that you can add to the base to just give it a nice finishing touch is a product from Army Painter. They make some great things. And they're 6mm battlefield grasses. This one is a swamp turf. This one would actually, I think, would go really well with your army. Basically, what they are is a little plastic sheet with clumps of static grass with adhesive on them. So you take a pair of pliers, basically, or tweezers, excuse me, not pliers, and you grab a tuft off, just like that, and then you simply place it on the model. Come at it from a different angle. It's a bit of a big piece. Let me rip off some of these strays here, guys. Sorry. There we go. And there you go. You've added a little tuft of grass there. And like I say, it's self-adhesive, so it's not going anywhere. And that model, that mini, is done, Chris. Other than the drying and a quick clear coat that I'll put on it to protect it in shipping, it is ready for you to put in your Signar army. P. Iris, done. Set her aside. So the last thing here that I just want to show you before we wrap up for the night is Kane's base. He is going to get the same color treatment using the same dry brush here. But what I want to do this time, instead of kind of covering the whole base, I just kind of want to focus on the edges of his base, a little bit across the top, a little bit across that swan sign there. And I'm just picking out those edges to add a little bit of contrast to the base, a little bit of visual variety. And we're not talking about, paint techniques that are going to change the world here. Dry brushing is a very basic technique. It's a good way to base an army quickly and to get that army on the table. And that's what one of my goals here with these videos is to teach techniques and help you develop skills that can help you paint your own army and get you to do it and you to get the results that you want to get. And tabletop quality, get them out quickly, get them done quickly, and play to your little heart's content with your little metal men. All right, and you can already see how much that's starting to change things there with that addition of that yellow-green. Now I'm going to come in with the thrall flesh and keep it pretty light on the edge. And I'm really not applying this color very, very heavy at all. Keeping it fairly light and soft. Okay, and you can see how that base turns out, looking pretty good. I'll paint the rim of that one black just like I did for Iris, and then once your Centurion dries, I'll be doing the same with that. And that about wraps it up, Chris, as far as your paint casts go. Like I said earlier, I hope that you've gotten out of this what you wanted. I hope it's been a good experience for you. I've certainly enjoyed working with you and talking with you via email. I think you've got a great color scheme going here. I think once you get all these minis painted, it's really going to look very solid on the table, and you're going to have a great looking force. Your galleon is going to be an impressive centerpiece. For those of you who haven't caught any of the other paint casts that I've done for Chris, we've mentioned it a few times. I'm going to be painting a galleon for him and doing it on commission. It might get, you know, an hour or two here or there for a paint cast as far as demonstrating specific techniques, but really it's going to be a long project that I'll be starting, you know, hopefully soon, and getting that out to him. So Chris, thank you though for letting me work with you, and I hope you've enjoyed everything we've done and talked about, and definitely make sure to ask me questions in the future when you got them, as far as your painting goes. For those of you who are in chat, I'm going to be logging off air here in just a few minutes, but if you do have any questions, now would be the time for you to put them up. While I'm waiting for some of those questions to come through, I am going to pull these off screen for the time being, and I'm going to bring out Mold, and I'm going to work on some base coating on his club for just a minute while I'm waiting for to see if you guys have any questions. I'll give it about another 5 minutes on that, and then I will be logging off for the evening. So in regards to Mold, his club here is pretty impressive. As you can see, it's a pretty dang large weapon, so it needs to look the part. And the way I'm going to do that is I am first base coating not the bark of the club, but the heartwood, I think is what it's called, the layer of wood underneath the bark. I'm base coating in thrall flesh, and the reason why I'm going with more of a green warm color is because he's got so much cool going on, so many cool colors. So I need to warm this up just a bit, just to create a little more contrast and keep that visually appealing. So that's what I'm doing right now, is just adding some thrall flesh to that part of the club. The bark will actually be probably, ironically, since we were talking about it tonight, Crick's Bane base. I've used that color on a few spots on the blue, and then I've also used it in the stones, and so I think it will transition well and create some harmony for the piece. Not being too particular with this base coat, because this club is going to get a ton of washes and a ton of glazes, and so I'm just making sure I get some nice even coverage out of the paint right now. Had a pretty good turnout tonight, it looks like. The most people I saw on air was about 13, I think, which was pretty cool as far as viewers. We're up to, on the channel, 111 likes for my Twitch channel, so thank you for the support, guys, very much. It's been fantastic. It's been a great month and a half of doing these, and I hope you guys have been enjoying them, because I've certainly been enjoying doing them. And we'll continue to be doing them for quite some time, I think. Tell your friends about it too, man. I know there's people out there who want to learn how to paint, and this service is right up their alley, so make sure and spread the word. If you're watching this on YouTube after the fact, I do stream once a week. Sometimes that day varies, and I actually got my on-call schedule for the emergency room today, and so all my paint casts for the month of May are going to take place on Thursday evening at 6:30, and I will be doing a Saturday paint cast starting at 2 p.m. I'm just not sure what day on Saturday in May. However, this Saturday, the 25th, I believe it is. Let me check my calendar here. Yep, the 25th, I will be doing a Saturday paint cast starting at 2 p.m. I will be focusing heavily on two-brush blending, specifically doing two-brush blending on this little Signar model right here, a Charger model, and I'm going to be doing him in the standard Signar scheme. And the client that I'll be working with really has a lot of questions about two-brush blending, so I'm going to be doing a very in-depth episode on two-brush blending. So if you have questions on that or know anyone who's interested in two-brush blending, that would be the episode for them to see. So definitely send them an email or send them my way, and I can get them hooked up with where they need to be and when they need to be there. And I talked about washes and glazes. This tree, once I get a layer of thrall flesh on that I like, is going to get a wash with the Army Painter Strong Tone, and that'll create a nice burned effect actually around some of these glyphs that have been carved into the handle of this club here. So it should look pretty good. All right, so let me check out chat and see what questions have come up since starting this second broadcast. Looks like there was some chat about with a couple of the guys regarding their personal armies that they're painting, which is really cool. Let's see. Drolath, he would love to see a paint cast covering quote-unquote special effects techniques such as gore, blood, splatter, weathering, oil streaks, and the like. So let me ask you, is this kind of the effect that you're talking about? Something like this? Let me grab a base that I've recently painted that would have that. That does. There we go. If you take a look at these, my guess is that's probably what you're looking for, is that kind of effect right there. Set these down and let me grab this guy here. He's from the Cephalix army that I'm painting for Donate or Paint. You can see that effect going on his base there. Turn my light just a little bit here to get a little bit more of a direct light. Yeah, there we go. So my guess is that's probably what you're talking about, Drolath. And as far as the gore that you're referring to, something like this guy here, I will actually be covering some of these techniques. I haven't had a client yet purchase one of the tutorial videos where they specifically wanted to cover these things, but in anticipation for the Donate or Paint Army that will be auctioned off by Chain Attack here in the next, hopefully by end of May, I will be doing a paint cast specifically dedicated to how I did this basing on the Cephalix Army, and how I did some of the different effects on these minis, like, you know, for example, the OSL that you see going on right there. I'll be talking about that, how I paint the bases, how I created, you know, some of these shadow effects and the purple and stuff. So I'll be covering all of that. I don't have a timeline on those yet. It just kind of depends on the overall progress on the Army and when I'm ready to get to that point. But that will be happening, so keep your eye on my Facebook page for that. Let's see here. Someone was talking about Bradigus, so we can just move right past that. We don't need to talk about that. Some more talk about armies, which is really cool. I like to see everyone chatting about that kind of stuff. Let's see here. JS Twitch, he's asking another airbrush question. Do you shoot the clear coat through the airbrush? Yes, I do. I use, depending on, well, let me back up for a second. I mentioned this in my PaintCast earlier tonight. I don't seal my minis all that often. I don't think, if a miniature surface has been prepared properly, you really don't need to put a clear coat on it. Okay, what's going to make the paint stick to the surface is prepping the surface and priming the surface and applying your base coat properly. You do those three things, and you'll get paint that's going to hold up really well. I think the P3 paints, as far as durability goes, are some of the best paints out there as far as how they hold up to wear and tear. That's kind of the other thing too, wear and tear. You're painting your minis, you're playing with your minis, they're going to wear out, they're going to get some chips on them. That's just par for the course. Shy of dipping them in shellac and then matte coating them, you're probably not going to ever have a mini that doesn't chip. It's just going to happen. But focus your energies though on preparing that surface, i.e. washing it, okay, applying the primer appropriately, meaning not too thick, and letting it dry thoroughly for 12 to 24 hours, and then applying your base coat properly, okay. If you're doing it with an airbrush, let it fully dry before moving on to the next stage, especially if you're going to be doing any kind of brush work on top of it. If you're using a brush, let it fully dry between those different layers that you put on there. The more time you put into prep, the less time you have to put into cleanup. So just kind of a good rule of thumb to go by. So I hope that answers your question. But when I do spray a clear coat through my airbrush, I use Vallejo matte medium, or matte varnish. I find that it is a little strong if I spray it through my airbrush concentrated. So I will actually add a drop or two of the gloss varnish to it just to get a little in-between satin type effect. But I mostly only use that though when I'm wanting to take the sheen off of a model. For example, on the back of this drudge here, you can see that there's a little bit of a gloss going on the purple cloak here. Okay. I don't want that to be on there in the final product, so I'm going to actually hit that area with a matte varnish to take away that gloss effect. Not to seal the model, but just to take away that gloss effect. So yeah, so I hope that answers your question, bud. Drillath is asking, do you prefer flocked bases or resin cast scenic bases like Secret Weapon bases? Justin has a great product there with Secret Weapon bases. I love them. In fact, these Cephalex bases here were donated by him for this army that I'm painting that's going to be donated. So it all depends on the theme you want, man. I don't have a preference. My Gorax, or Getarex, that's this base here is all custom made from casting Hearst Arts molds, using some flocking and using some leaves. But then the drudge here, you know, the heavy for the Cephalex army, that's a Secret Weapon base. And then I just showed you guys on the P Iris and the Centurion there of making a graveled base. So so it's just you know, what I think the better answer to that question is, Drolath, is what is it you're wanting your army to look like? What is the theme that you're trying to achieve? And if you can find a resin base that will fit that, use it. If you want to flock it and sand it, you know, like I did with P Iris there, then do that. You know, it's the basing, as I mentioned earlier, should tie your army together. So whatever basing that is, stick with it, man. JS Twitch is asking, how do you manage airbrush paint clogging on the needle? Par for the course. It's going to clog. Acrylic paints dry fast, and that's just going to happen. As far as how I manage it, I have noticed since I've started using the the Vallejo airbrush thinner that my paint, the needle does not clog as quickly, but it still clogs. So one thing you can do, especially when you have a long airbrushing session, is let me move these guys out of the way here. So here's my airbrush here, and if you're getting tip dry on the end of your brush there, one thing you can do is take a paintbrush with a little bit of thinner or cleaner on it, and then just gently brush the needle. Make sure you brush it on both sides, okay, and that will help wipe off some of that tip dry. The other thing you can do too is, let me zoom back out, when you're airbrushing, I don't think there's any air pressure in, oh there is a little bit. So you're airbrushing, okay, you're covering an area, and then you start to feel like you're getting a little bit of tip dry. So you've got your model here, you're airbrushing the model, okay, you're getting a little bit of tip dry. Point your airbrush off to the side and pull that trigger back a few times, okay? And what that'll do is clean, you can see the needle action going there. It'll clean that needle tip off for you, and then you can come back to what you're airbrushing and then pull off to the side and just pull that trigger a couple of times. And that's another way that you can help mitigate that too. But it's going to happen. I mean, that's the bottom line, is it's going to happen, and there's nothing you can do about that. Let's see here. JS Twitch asks also, can you shoot any paint if it's mixed properly, or do you work with airbrush paints primarily? I have Scale 75 paints, I have inks, I have P3 paints, Vallejo Air paints, Badger Air paints, Creatix airbrush paints. I use all kinds of paint. If it's thinned properly, if you're operating at the right pressure and you have learned those skills of how close you have to be to the surface, how far to pull your trigger back, and how quickly you need to move across the surface, if you've mastered those skills, you can put anything through an airbrush. My Awada here, which is my kind of my workhorse, I've sprayed enamels through this, I've sprayed oils through this, I've sprayed decanted gosh, what kind of paint is it called? I forget. It's not lacquer. That's what it's called. I've sprayed lacquers through this. I've sprayed acrylics through this. So I mean, if you prep it right, and clean it when you're done, you can use it for just about anything. So, what is your time zone? I missed the start. I'm on Mountain Standard Time, so right now it is just past 10 p.m. So if you are on the East Coast, it would be, I believe, 2 a.m. right now. If you're in California or Arizona, I believe it would be 9 p.m. So that's how that goes. So anyway, guys, thanks for checking me out. Thanks for sticking around. Grateful to everyone who was here. If you have any questions or want to have your own PaintCast video made, feel free to email me at redmodeling@gmail.com, or check out my Facebook page, facebook.com/redmodeling. You can also find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/redmodelingpaint, and you can feel free to subscribe to my channel if you'd like. And I'm also on YouTube, but I'm not on YouTube under Red Modeling. I'm on YouTube as Ashton Holbrook, which is my first and last name, so you can search that there. Facebook, though, is really how I get all the information out, guys, as far as when these PaintCasts are happening next. So we will see everyone on Saturday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, when I will be on to focus on the two-brush blending tutorial. Otherwise, guys, thanks for being here, and keep painting. We'll catch you guys later.